Hey guys, it's your girl, it's your lady, it's your woman of a certain age, Kevina, and welcome back to my channel. Today is Wednesday, so it is Badass Women of History Wednesday. If you like makeup, if you like history, if you like badass women, if you like me, then I hope that you subscribe to this channel and watch me on Wednesdays, mostly Wednesdays. Trying to get every Wednesday. But I'm a mom and I work full time and it's hard sometimes. But mostly on Wednesdays, I will be adding a new video where I sit down and do my makeup and teach you, talk to you, or talk to the nether about a badass woman in history. So if you like that kind of stuff, hit the like button and make sure you subscribe. So I know that I missed last week, but a lot was going on, and this person deserves to have like my full attention and make sure that I do this right. So that's why I was not on last week, because if y'all saw my notes, I took a lot of notes on this person. And guys, if you haven't noticed, the purple is gone. The hair is gone. I got a new short do, blonde, new hair, who dis, new hair, new me. So thank you so much to my girl, Nicole, at the color bar. Hey, Brian, put her logo right here. Give her some love. Shout out to my girl, Nicole, for giving me this lovely haircut and doing her thing. So yes, we're about to get started. I'm not going to talk about the makeup I'm about to put on my face. I will just put it in the description box down below if you are interested in what I am wearing. The only thing I have on right now is my skincare and my primer. And yes, before y'all come at me, I know that my face has never looked worse. Trust me, I know. I don't know what's going on. Well, I kind of think I know what's going on with it. Brian accidentally got the Gain liquid fabric softener instead of the Gain liquid detergent, and we washed our sheets in it, and I've been sleeping on that, and I think that's why my face is mad at me, because I can't figure out why else it's not. But yes, I know it looks horrible. So yeah, but we're about to fix that. So here we go. Today we are going to be talking about the legendary and iconic LGBTQ plus icon, Marsha P. Johnson. Why did I choose to speak about Marsha? Well, besides the fact that she was fabulous, it is June and it is Pride Month. So to all of my LGBTQ plus subscribers or people out there, happy Pride. Love you, support you, you do you, love is love, all of that. And I also wanted to highlight a figure and an activist that kind of made the whole Pride movement possible. But first I want to say a couple of things. This is going to be a little disclaimer. I try to be a good ally to the LGBTQ plus community, and while I was researching this wonderful woman and all the history that surrounds her, I'm going to try to do her justice. With that being said, if I make some mistakes or if I do something wrong, let me know. I'm here to learn. I know it's not necessarily the LGBTQ plus community to teach me, but if I mess up, feel free to tell me so that way I can make it right, because I want to do y'all justice and be a good person and a good ally, and I'm constantly learning. And if you're not, I suggest that you constantly learn and open up your horizons. That goes on to part 2. If this video or this person is not your cup of tea, that's fine. That's cool. You know, I'm all about you do you, boo, and I'll do me. But I'm not going to tolerate any type of hate or any mean comments below. So if that's your thing, just exit out the video now. You don't need to stay up in here and listen to me talk about somebody that you don't want to hear about. I think that you should. I think learning about different people is awesome, and it helps you, learn some empathy about different communities. But if this isn't your thing, that's fine. Just exit out now, because I ain't dealing with no hate. Okay, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. Okay. And the next part is serious. In this video today, I will be talking about violent acts, sexual assault, and mental issues. So this is a trigger warning for anybody that has any of those, or if any of those issues affect anybody. Please exit out the video now. You can skip this one, but I just want to let you know that I will be talking about some of that stuff. So, alright, so let's get into it, okay, guys? So, Marsha P. Johnson was born August 24th, 1945, in Elizabeth City, New Jersey. She was born Malcolm Michaels Jr., and she was the 5th out of 7 siblings. Her father was a General Motors assembly line worker, and her mother was a housekeeper. She was born into a very religious household. They were very stringent in their faith. So that had to do with a lot of Marsha's childhood growing up. At the age of 5, she started dressing up in female clothing. And, this being, 1950 at the time, you can guess that went over not so well with her very religious family and the community. But that's what she liked to do, and that's what she liked to wear. She had stated later on in an interview that she was sexually assaulted at a very young age, and I believe she was dressed in female clothing at the time, and it was because of that sexual assault by that young man that she stopped being who she wanted to be and dressing in clothes that she was most comfortable in. So she stopped dressing up in female clothing at a young age after she was sexually assaulted. I'm sure her religious family life didn't really help. After Marsha was sexually assaulted, she kind of thought about being gay as a dream, and didn't really, think that was a possibility for her. So she kind of just kept that to herself, and she wasn't sexually active after that young age until she moved to New York City. So Marsha grows up. I'm kicking up a lot of stuff, y'all. Marsha grows up and graduates high school, and then some of the resources say that that Marsha joined the Navy. Some of the articles that I read said that she had joined the Navy. Others kind of just said after graduation she headed out to New York City. Either which way, if she was in the military or in the Navy, she didn't stay long, because in 1963, with just $15 to her name and in her pocket, she moved her lovely self to the Big Apple, New York City. So it is in New York City that Marsha really found herself and began to exclusively dress in women's clothing and be who she always wanted to be and her true authentic self. When she got to New York City, she started playing around with different names and different identities. One time she was called Black Marsha, and then she called herself several other names, but ultimately she landed on Marsha P. Johnson. And I love this story. The P standing for Pay It No Mind. And the reason why she chose the P for Pay It No Mind is when people would ask her about her gender or her identity, she would say, "Pay it no mind, honey," which I just think is wonderful and fabulous, that she just wanted to be herself, and everybody else just, you do you, boo. That's what I feel like she was like. It was in New York that Marsha was able to be her true authentic self. But when she got there, remember, she only had $15 in her pocket. So what was a girl to do to make money with no skills, no education, nada? Unfortunately, Marsha went into sex work and what is now known as survival sex work. So basically, she went into sex work because that was the only way that she could feed, clothe, house herself at this time. So that's what she had to do to survive. Marsha being in the sex work industry was dangerous. She was harassed, assaulted numerous times. One of her Johns even actually shot her, which was a crazy story. And it was just dangerous, and illegal. And she ended up getting arrested over 100 times, she said, due to being a sex worker. But regardless of all of that, she ended up finding community where she was at. She was in what we know as, now listen, I'm not from New York. I've been 1 or 2 times. I don't necessarily know all the boroughs and all the whatevers, but when she got to New York, she kind of settled in a part of New York City called the Village, Greenwich Village? Or what the cool people call the Village. That's where she ended up settling in. And back during this time in the 50s and 60s and even, the 70s, we'd like to think that the LGBTQ community, was fine and, accepted. They weren't. And so when Marsha moved to the Village, she ended up finding a sense of community there because that just happened to be, where other people that were like her in the LGBTQ plus community were going and living and thriving in this, well, I wouldn't necessarily say thriving, but a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community were in the Village at this time. So she had people that were part of her community that were like her. And so that was really good for her to be able to have, that being that she was a girl from New Jersey coming into the big old city with no money, no friends, no family there. So she ended up making her own friends and family. It is, during this time that she runs into and befriends Sylvia Rivera, who is another LGBTQ plus activist and trans woman. I believe she met Sylvia when Sylvia was 11, and basically Marsha took her in and was like, hey, I'm going to show you how to live on the street, and show her workplaces that are safe to go, and even taught Sylvia how to do her makeup, which I thought was a sweet story. And it's just so much like Marsha, with all the stories that you hear about how kind she was. So she kind of found where she belonged with the people that she belonged, but that doesn't necessarily mean, that she was safe, because, people are still people even back during this time. So Marsha's a regular on the scene. I don't know what I got on my thing. And she starts going to this bar called the Stonewall Inn. Well, I've also heard that during this time, the Stonewall Inn was just kind of for just gay men. I don't think women were really allowed in there. They certainly didn't like drag queens or people of that nature in the bar. But, Marsha was like, I don't care, I'm going in. And so Marsha started going in the bar. And at the time, what's funny is the mob at this time actually owned several gay bars in New York City, because they could rent out these buildings and these places that were in horrible condition, that no regular person, technically, when I say regular, no like businessman or somebody that's like, hey, I want to make a lot of money off of a bar, would technically pay rent on. So they offered it up to the LGBTQ plus community to make a quick buck. It is said that the Stonewall back in the day didn't even have running water. So it wasn't like this nice, fancy, upscale, trendy place. It was basically just a place that the mob was making money off of and allowed people in the LGBTQ plus community to have a place to go, drink, socialize. But they still were kind of like making sure that they were watching themselves and not really doing anything too avant-garde to make any waves or, to cause any issues or beyond. Basically what I'm trying to say is they weren't like, woo! They were kind of low-key doing, going in there and having a good time and not drawing attention to themselves, because when they draw attention to themselves, then here comes the police. So the mob owned the building that the Stonewall Inn was in. Marsha starts going there, and there's several other people in the LGBTQ plus community that frequent this place as well. It's kind of like a happening spot, Christopher Street in the Village is, where to go if you are part of this community. And it was also known too that most of the time when the cops, because the cops at this time could arrest you for indecency and being gay, and what I look upon now is just like, really, just stupid shit, excuse my language, but that's how things were back then. You could get arrested for holding a guy's hand if you were a man, or kissing another woman if you were a woman. Hell's bells, you could get arrested for being a man and dressing in women's clothing, or being a drag queen, or being a trans woman. Like, if you were different, the police could find a reason to arrest your ass, which is just sad. But it's also known that, hey, if you pay the police off too, most of the time they'd leave you alone. So here's this community paying the mob to have a safe space to have a drink and mingle and get together, and then here's the police, they're paying them off too. Well, it is said that on June 28th, the police came to the Stonewall Inn yet again, because they had already come the night before and arrested some people, and that 2 plainclothes officers walked in to see what was going on, and then basically just decided to start arresting people, lining them up. And people were pissed. They were like, dude, we just paid you money. You were just here arresting people. Like, why are you coming back a second night in a row? And there was like 5 or 6 of them, or maybe there was more police officers there. They had paddy wagons outside. So they were basically doing a raid. And this, rightly so, pissed some people off, because they were like, we're done dealing with this shit. And now this is where some things get interesting when it comes to Marsha. Depending on what article you read, depending on what source you have, depending on, what interview, this is where things, there's different tales to Marsha's encounter with the police at Stonewall. Some sources say that during the raid, when these police officers, start to kick off and, start arresting people, and people were getting pissed, that Marsha threw a shot glass at a mirror and yelled, "I got civil rights." I believe that's what she said. But the story goes that she threw a shot glass at a mirror, and that kicked off the riot, rebellion, at Stonewall, and kicked this whole thing off. And that was later known as the shot glass heard around the world, because later on I'm going to get into it, like what happened on Christopher Street ended up sparking like a revolution in the LGBTQ plus community. So there's Marsha throwing shot glasses at a mirror saying, "I got my civil rights." That's one story. Another story is that people were rioting, or, fed up with it, or resisting arrest, and it was spilling out into the streets where cops were trying to arrest people, and more of the community was like coming to the Stonewall to stop what was going on, or, to help their friends out, or just be like, we ain't taking this no more. Another story is stated that Marsha was near a street light, or a light pole or something, and she was kind of like not hanging from it, but was around it, and she threw a brick at a police car, or she threw a large purse at the police car, and then that set it off. Whatever story, whatever version you have heard, nevertheless, a lot of people contribute the Stonewall Rebellion, riot, rising to Marsha and her just being sick and tired of being sick and tired, if that makes sense. So regardless, Marsha Pay It No Mind Johnson was in the thick of it. So these riots, rebellion, whatever you want to call it, took place from June 28th to July 3rd. So we're really coming up on the anniversary of that. And this event would be one of the most important events for the gay community and the LGBTQ plus community, because it basically led to the gay liberation movement. It was after this uprising that Marsha really started to get into more activism. A lot more of the community started to get into activism, and doing sit-ins, rallies, and they ended up forming the Gay Liberation Front, who would then in turn, I believe, come together and host the first Pride Parade in New York City, which was actually the Christopher Street Liberation Parade, and it was done a year after the Stonewall riots to commemorate what had happened. Yeah. This shot glass heard around the world kicked it off. Like, this was news, this was big, not just going on in New York, but going on, everywhere. The LGBTQ plus community in the world was like, we want rights. We're tired of being in the shadows. We're tired of not being able to live our authentic selves and our best life and be happy. So this kicked off a whole movement. But it's because of all of this that Marsha, and you remember I was talking about our good friend Sylvia Rivera, got together and they started getting very active in the community and doing a lot of activism. And they started to see that people like them, the trans community, were kind of being left behind by the gay community. And that just didn't sit right with them, because, they're a community within the community. And they're noticing, a lot more trans youth coming into New York City and not having a place to stay, not knowing where it's safe to go, having anything to eat. So basically they got together and they said, hey, we should do something about this. And so Marsha and Sylvia got together and formed a group called STAR, which stood for the Street Transvestite, now trans, Activist Revolutionaries. And they got money through sex work to basically find a place for these kids to be able to go and unite and be safe and have food and a roof over their head. Which was just amazing, because nobody else was really, helping out this section of the community. And can you imagine being 14, 15 years old, no money, no family, no nothing, and going to the big city and not knowing what the hell to do, where to go? It was just terrifying. But, thankfully, Marsha and Sylvia were like, we're going to help. We're going to help these kids. And it said that one of the first star houses was actually an abandoned truck. One of those, you know, big trucks that have like the trailer on the, just imagine one of those that they pull stuff out of. You know what I'm talking about, the truck. Not like a pickup truck, but like a big truck. Anyway, they thought it was abandoned. They were living there for a while because this truck hadn't moved in a while. But apparently it wasn't abandoned because one day the truck took off and like 20 so, you know, kids were jumping out of it because the truck was going off. But they also, the mob, yet again, knowing that they can make a quick buck, also rented like a dilapidated walk up for them. Yet again, no running water, no electricity, but it was a safe space. Nobody bothered them. They had a roof over their head, and these kids had unity, somewhere safe to go, food, and two women that were showing them the ropes of the city and the community that they were in, and basically letting them be who they were, which I just find to be amazing, because those two didn't have anything. Literally, they had nothing to their name, but they were willing to take what money they were making in a very dangerous job to help out people that were new to the life and new to the area and new to this whole way of being, which is what they wanted to be their whole entire lives, and to just look after them and watch over them. They ended up calling them Mama Marsha, Mama, you know, Sylvia. I just think that is great, because they didn't have to. They could have worried about themselves, but instead they were selfless people who ended up, you know, trying to take care of kids that were coming into the community. And I just think that was just wonderful. It was also the creation of Star that helped, or not helped, but reminded the LGBTQ plus community that there were different communities within the gay community, and that they were also fighting for their own rights. It is said that the Gay Liberation Front and the movement in New York City at this time was becoming very white, very cisgender, and just gay. Like, they weren't worried about anybody else. And at one time during a pride parade, they didn't want drag queens or trans people to be involved in the parade, or even be in the front, or even be invited to it. So think about that for a minute. This is your community too, and these people who you're helping fight to get their rights don't care about your rights and are kind of embarrassed by you. How shitty is that? But as you know, Marsha Pay It No Mind and Sylvia Rivera were like, we ain't having this. So what did they do? They got to the parade early and got in front. That's right. Your girls were like, we want our civil rights too. We want our gay rights now as well. And there is actually a really beautiful moment. I mean, it's beautiful, but at the time it had to have been hard as hell, where Sylvia gets up during the middle of the Pride rally, because they marched through a section of New York City and then got to an end where they were having speakers and stuff. And these people actually booed her for getting up on stage, for basically calling them out and saying, hey, we're here fighting for our rights too. Y'all forgotten about us. We are homeless and dying in the street. You know, there's violence against us, probably more than there's violence against you. We have nothing, and you are helping. You are not helping us at all. You're forgetting about us. And some people really didn't want to hear that, but she was actually booed, and I just was like, oh my gosh. So I just thought that was crazy. But I love the fact that they were like, not hell no, but no, are y'all gonna forget that we are here? And those two got in the front of the parade, and I believe that they stayed in the front of the parade ever since then, for every time that they would have one. So I think that's great. I didn't know if I should touch on this part or not, but this is part of her life too, and I think that, it needs to be discussed, for all the wonderful things that Marsha was, and all of her great attributes. She did have some issues. She had some mental health issues, and there's nothing wrong with that, but back in this time, actually being gay was considered a mental issue. Being trans was considered a mental issue. That blows my mind. But not only that, but I also think that people that had mental issues back then that are struggling with their mental health, there was more places for them to go, more hospitals and systems like that. We don't hardly have that now. We have what we like to call prisons that we send people to. But Marsha did struggle with some her mental health. Some people think that she was undiagnosed paranoid schizophrenic. But whatever the case, there will be several times throughout her life while Marsha was in New York City that her friends and people in the community would not see her for a month or so, and that's because Marsha would have a breakdown and she would be carted off to, I think it's Bellevue, where they would kind of basically tranquilize her. And they would keep her for a month or two, tranquilize her, and then send her back off in the streets. And her friends would say that she would be missing for a month or so, come back, and be kind of out of it for a week or so. And then the whatever drugs they were giving her kind of flushed itself out of her system. And then she was her happy, jovial, normal, caring self. She also sometimes struggled with alcohol. And when she did drink to excess, it's whenever her male side would come out, and I'm going to use the pronoun he because that's what she called him, and that's the people that saw and witnessed it, that when he became Malcolm, or when she became Malcolm, while drinking, very violent and looking for a fight. There were not a lot of instances where they talked about that a whole lot, so I don't know if it was like a big issue. I don't necessarily think it was. I think for the most part, she did struggle a little bit with mental illness, but not a lot about her alcoholism, or if she even was an alcoholic, really came into play. It was just kind of like, it happened a couple of times, but it wasn't like her whole life, if that makes sense. Also, in an interview in 1992, she came out as saying that, or not came out, but she revealed that in 1990 she contracted HIV. And a lot of y'all might be too young. I know I was young during the AIDS or HIV epidemic. There was a lot of negative stereotypes and a lot of negative thoughts and thinking and actions whenever it came to people who found out that they had the HIV virus. And Marsha ended up becoming a huge activist, of course, and a predominant ACT UP activist in the earliest stages, and she was also one of the most prominent AIDS activists during this time, because she wanted people to know that she had it and it wasn't something to be scared of. She wasn't to be scared of, and that, they're just people. So she was trying to get rid of the negative stigmas that surrounded that. So that's the little section on her mental health and her health. Through her activism, and even long before her activism, just, Marsha's presence and her willingness to give so much of herself and any little thing that she had, whether it be her time, her voice, anything, led her to be called in the community Saint Marsha. Not just because she was still religious at this time, and, she played around with Catholicism, and, she prayed to different gods like Neptune and stuff like that. she was just such a genuinely good and decent person. It is, I mean, for crying out loud, she, looked after, kids that were coming into New York and that were different, and kids that were trans and gay and in the community and like being overlooked. But it is also said that, if she had $2 to her name, which, Marsha didn't have a lot, if she was down to her last $2 and she saw somebody on the street hungry, she would give them her last $2 and go, all right, let's go get you a sandwich. Let's go get you something to eat. She was, big in the drag community, and, some of the queens, the drag queens, had beautiful dresses and, fancy stuff and makeup. And Marsha got most of her stuff from thrift stores and going thrift shopping and things that she would find or that people would give her. She didn't have a whole lot. But if you were walking down the street and you're like, oh my gosh, hey Marsha, I love your necklace, love your brooch, love this, love that. Here, honey, here. Like she would freely give you anything that she had if you wanted it, if you asked for it, if you liked it, or if you thought it was pretty, and I just think that that's just an amazing quality that not a lot of people now have at all. I'm sure shit not. She was all around a sweet, genuine, good person, wonderful manners, very polite. It is even said that during her death, or when she passed, when people were moving from the church down to the Christopher Street Pier to a little memorial service and to throw flowers in the water for her, that there were so many people out there celebrating her life that they couldn't fit on the sidewalk. And one of the mourners went up to a police officer and was like, hey, can we have the street? We're not fitting on the sidewalk. Like, there's too many of us. Can you make sure that nobody hits us, or that, you clear the path? And originally the cop was like, no. And then he was like, well, who is this? And then when they told the cop that it was Marsha, he stopped and he said, yeah, you can have the street. Marsha was a good queen. So, he might not use the right term, or maybe he did, I don't know, back then. But, even a cop was like, yeah, she was a good person. And, yeah. I just think that shows just a huge piece of her character, for her to be that loved and that well thought of. And, when you talk to people, or not when you talk to people, whenever you listen to these stories and watch these documentaries about her, it's one of the things that people always talked about was how, giving she was, and how nice she was, and how she looked after people and always had a smile on her face and was always, laughing. I just think that that's really, really amazing. Sadly, in July of 1992, it is said that Marsha went missing for a couple of days. And then it was on July 6th, 1992, that Marsha's body was found in the Hudson River. She had sustained a severe head injury whenever they pulled her out of the water. And even though she had this, bad head injury, the police ruled it as a suicide. And on July 6th, 1992, at just 46 years old, Marsha Payette No Mind Johnson died. And what's really sad, not just because, the world lost a shining light, but the fact that because she was Black, because she was gay, because she was trans, the police decided her death was not worth investigating and ruled it as a suicide. And that's something that I can't get over. A life is a life. There are several theories as to what had happened to Marsha. Some say that, she committed suicide because, as I talked about earlier, she had some issues with mental health. A lot of her friends were like, no, she was not suicidal. Sylvia Rivera also was like, no, we made a pact that we would cross the River Jordan together, meaning the Hudson River, that if they were ever going to do that, they would do it, or commit suicide, they would do it together. And then a lot of other people were like, no, she loved life, so she wouldn't do that. Another crazy rumor was that they kind of touched base on the Netflix documentary about Marsha, was that it was a mob hit. Because you know how the mob, I talked about earlier, the mob was in the village, was in this community, getting money out of them and, basically exploiting people for money. But it was a mob hit because her roommate was trying to change who was in charge of like the Christopher Street Festival, I think it was called. Gotta hydrate. So yeah, that the mob knew who her roommate was, and to get back at the roommate for causing a ruckus and trying to get their people kicked off of this committee or whatever, where they're laundering lots and lots of money, and him kicking up all this fuss, that there was a hit on that they killed Marsha instead as a, scare tactic. What more people actually believe, because there are witnesses that said that they saw Marsha involved in an altercation with some thugs. There's some pretty sketch dudes near the pier, or near where she was found, and that the people that she was getting into an altercation with used some bad words or some slurs against her, and calling her derogatory names, and trying to steal from her or whatever. And then one of those people, one of the persons that was a part of this group that was harassing her and that she was getting into an altercation with, had later bragged in a bar that he had killed a famous drag queen, or that he had killed a drag queen. So you have all these theories, and the cops were like, nah, she did it to herself. It's just sad. Anywho, but no matter what happened to Marsha, no matter if it was the mob, no matter if it was this group attacking her, or no matter if it was her jumping to try to get away from this group, the fact of the matter is that her death was extremely suspicious, and the New York City Police Department did nothing. All because she was a gay black man. Their words. She's still a person with thoughts, feelings, friends, family, and no matter what, she was a force and a light that the world needed, especially during that time. Sad. Pride is now celebrated throughout the world, and it might not have been if it wasn't for her. Trans rights might not be where it is today, even though it needs more, without the hard work and dedication of Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. Star wouldn't have been there. Just all these great advocacy groups might not have been if it wasn't for her and her fighting to get to be just who she wants to be and her true authentic self. So she leaves behind a huge advocate legacy. And not only that, but also a big legacy in the arts. This is a side note. I mean, I think it's cool, but it's not defining or definitive of who she was. But back in the day, Andy Warhol, Campbell Soup dude, artist, picture here, actually did a series called Ladies and Gentlemen that Marsha was featured in, which was really cool because, I mean, if Andy Warhol back then thought you were cool, then apparently you were cool. And she also traveled with a well-known drag queen troupe called the Hot Peaches. where she was very well very well loved and popular. So she definitely left her mark on the world, not just in New York City, but the world. I just find that to be fascinating. Oh, this is a look. So Marsha left behind a wonderful legacy full of activism and art, goodness and kindness, and a smile. I wish that I could say that due to her tenacity and activism, that the LGBTQ plus community, especially the trans community, would be in a better place than it is right now, but unfortunately it is not. 2020 and 2021 have been the worst year for the trans community in our country. More than 100 bills have been authored and are trying to go through currently right now that deal with the trans community. Everything from the trans youth and their sports that they can play. We've also had stupid bathroom bills, whether or not they can serve in the military, just a shit ton of people trying to deny people their basic human rights, their rights underneath the Constitution, just a bunch of foolishness. And if it wasn't bad enough, trying to take away the trans community's rights, we are also seeing an uptick in violence. We're seeing an uptick in violence against the trans community, especially trans women of color. Just this year alone, at least 29 transgender or gender non-conforming people have been violently killed or shot. Just this year. We're only halfway through the year. And most of those 29 individuals that were killed were sadly women of color. I don't know what to think of. I don't know what to say about that, other than we got some shit to do, people. And then the statistics on trans youth are, even sadder, with 120% of the youth, the trans youth population, having thought of tried to commit suicide. Many of the LGBTQ plus, especially the trans community, face violence, face poverty, and homelessness. In this world where we preach Christianity and goodness and be kind, we got our work cut out for us. We can do so much better than what we are doing, and we got some shit to do, because nobody should be hurt or killed or harassed or homeless or anything because of who they want to be in life, who they want to love in life, how they want to dress in life, how they want to appear in life. That's just foolishness to me. I can't wrap my mind around it. At the end of the day, you being trans doesn't affect me. You being gay, bi, doesn't bother me, doesn't affect me, doesn't do anything to me. Like, you living your life and being your true authentic self and loving who you love, or doesn't affect me. Doesn't affect me, doesn't affect my family. And so I don't understand why people can't stay in their lane, and why people can't just love everybody, warts and all. I don't understand that. But I'm going to leave you with this quote from the lovely Marsha P. Johnson to wrap this video up. And she said, "How many years has it taken people to realize that we are all brothers and sisters and human beings in the human race? Unfortunately, we're still trying to learn that lesson, and I think those words are very prevalent for today. We're all just humans. We're all just trying to, get by, trying to, be ourselves, love who we want to love, be who we want to be, and be happy. And we can do so much better for our brothers and sisters and the gender non-conforming people in the LGBTQ plus community. We can do better. We should do better. So yeah, that is the lovely and the iconic Marsha P. Johnson. I am going to link some links down below for you to be able to be a better ally, to learn correct terminology. Hopefully I got the terminology correct. And then also links for you to be able to donate to, and where you can learn more. Learning more helps you be a better person. So definitely check out those links below. If I've missed anything, if I messed anything up, let me know down in the comments. And like I said, I ain't here for no hate. So don't be doing all that craziness. And yeah, what do you know about Marsha P. Johnson? Have you ever heard of her? Do you know her story? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, let me know who you would like me to talk about next in the wonderful series that is Badass Women of History. Because Marsha was a badass, and she did so much good in the world, and I wish more people were like her. So definitely make sure that you like and subscribe, and hopefully I will see you guys on the next one. Bye. Cocky. Psst, psst. He don't pay it no mind either. Bye.